I refuse to believe that God of War Ragnarok is the end of the Norse saga. You might call me an idiot, you might think I have trouble letting things go, well you might be a little right on that, but ever since I finished God of War Ragnarok, I just didn't feel like this is the end. The end of a story that we had been invested in and hyped for years now. And in this video, I'm going to give you all my reasons why I think this isn't the end, some rock solid proof, and in my next video, I'll share my theory on where I think this is all going. Where I think the actual end of the Norse saga is. My name is Eddie, and if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more gaming content like this. The Norse story of God of War was so powerful and so well done in places that the sheer amount of loose ends we are left with, the number of legitimate questions we have left unanswered, I really couldn't believe that this was supposed to be the end of it all. Questions like, so what actually happened to Faye then exactly? Because we never actually find out. And who blew the horn in 2018 and why? Because they specifically call our attention to it and then nothing. As well as that, we are left with many post-game teasers that we got once the story was done and dusted. Things that felt like setups for something cool. Like finding Tyr in that Asgardian prison crashed in Niflheim after the story was completed. And then finding him in other realms as you travel as if he was doing something with purpose. And Thrud taking Thor's hammer and then blasting off into the sky in Alfheim. Like, what? For days afterwards, I racked my brain trying to figure out the reason why this ending felt so open, so inconclusive, so unfinished. And then, after many hours, it hit me. That's because it is unfinished. We think this is the end, but really there is more of the story to be told. It's the obvious answer to all of this confusion. And the more that I think about it, the more I believe it to be true. I know what you're thinking right now. Eric Williams said that God of War Ragnarok would be the game that ends the Norse saga, and Cory Barlog, who follows me on Twitter because we're best friends, no big deal, just putting that out there. Cory Barlog said that the team didn't want to work for 15 years on the same story, so that's why they are ending it here with Ragnarok. I know. But firstly, who would believe in a guy named Cory anyway? Come on. But also, since finishing the game, I have been thinking about every unfinished story and every interview / statement from the cast and crew, ranging from direct quotes from key people like Cory Barlog and Ben Prendergast, the voice actor for Tyr, down to the subtle indications from post-game content, and the only explanation for them are that we are not done with the Norse setting and the next installment of God of War could be coming very soon. Join me on this journey. The first big bit of evidence, which is the strongest piece of evidence, is Cory Barlog's words itself referencing another game involving Jormungandr. Right after the game came out, some people took to Twitter to criticize some parts of Ragnarok. Some people felt like the ending was a little bit rushed, and I can see where they're coming from after 2018 was such a simple and well-paced story. You can get that kind of feeling from Ragnarok with how much is going on. Anyhow, Cory Barlog speaks in this tweet about Jormungandr and the stories that were told of him, like Freya mentions how Jormi just appeared one day in Midgard and nobody exactly knows how, etc. Then he mentions how we closed that loop by seeing Jormungandr being struck by Thor, sending him back in time the way that Mimir described it, shaking the world tree so violently that it shot him back in time. Simple as that, right? Well, apparently it's not so simple, because Cory then decides to add one more line to his tweet underneath saying, but how he got back in time, well, that's a story for another game. Cory, you son of a bitch. Not only does that cast doubt over the idea that the world tree sent the serpent back in time, or that Thor's blow caused the time jump for Jormungandr, and perhaps something or someone else is the culprit, but it also leads us to believe that there is more game to come involving Jormungandr, which almost certainly confirms another game set in the Norse setting if he's involved. Now, we do know that Jormungandr traveled to other realms before we meet him in God of War 2018, because we see the rubble from other realms in his stomach as we retrieve Mimir's eye, and as far as we know, Jormungandr didn't use the travel room or have the ability to use Asgard's Bifrost. So maybe Jormungandr has the ability to move through time and space, and that hit from Thor actually caused him to use his ability on accident? Maybe, just maybe. And that could mean that the time he disappears in Asgard, he doesn't go directly back in time to that time in Midgard. Maybe he goes somewhere else first, and that could be part of the another game that Cory's mentioning. Maybe. But what is more important to this video is that if Jormungandr will be in another game, that must mean that we'll be getting another game in the Norse setting, and that is where we will get our explanation. Pretty compelling already, and that's only number one of the compelling evidence. The next indication is a comment directly from Tyr's voice actor Ben Prendergast while speaking on a God of War retrospective panel in PAX 2023. This happened literally a week ago. And when I say indication, while answering a question on Tyr's role in future games, he flat out says, "I'll say this. This isn't the last you've seen of Tyr," which is clear that he knows he will have a part in a future game of some sort, a game that is likely to be set in the Norse realms, and based on him being so confident, I feel like it would be too soon to give an actor a guarantee and clue him in or her on a game that's 5+ years out. So what I think Ben is referring to is something a lot closer, like a smaller game perhaps, some sort of expansion maybe. And honestly, I want more Tyr. We spent no time with the real Tyr, and when we saw him in the post-credits game, when he was doing his thing in each of the realms, to me that was a clear sign that there is more coming, and specifically more in the Norse pantheon of God of War. The evidence is mounting. The third piece of evidence of another Norse game coming is in two parts, one involving Sindri's voice actor Adam Harrington, and the other being the fact that Atreus' story is still so incomplete. I mean, there is a possibility we don't get to see the stuff that he gets up to when he leaves us at the end of Ragnarok, but Atreus just begins what I feel like is the path of the boy his mother expected him to be, and being the savior of his people. And then he just leaves to do that. It's just odd. I mean, maybe possibly it could end there, but it just feels like they're saying, "To be continued," and they are going to tell us more soon. And of course, Atreus ties in with Sindri's unfinished story because of how the way things ended between them, two close friends, family even, broken apart. Even at the end of the game, after the secret ending with Brock's funeral, Sindri still had so much anger and emotion bottled up and left without so much as a goodbye. It was heartbreaking. And while we all thought that was it, under one of my tweets praising Adam's performance in Ragnarok, another fan says to Adam that he had hoped for a better ending for the brothers one day. And Adam replies simply saying, "Time will tell." Now, that doesn't sound like the words of a man who's been told that this is the definitive end for his story and his character. Nor is his quote tweet of someone asking if Sindri would become the villain, now based on how much hatred he holds for Atreus still, and him simply responding with, "Whatever is in store for Sindri is in the brilliant minds of Cory and the Sony Santa Monica team." Oh, the villain of an Atreus-led side game, perhaps? Where he will let the grief get the better of him whilst in isolation and attempt to get revenge on the one person he believes is responsible? That sounds amazing to me. Doesn't that sound kind of likely now? Doesn't it sound like that's something that's being set up here? Let me know in the comment section if you wasn't a believer starting this video and have now come round. Let me know. Now, when you take those 3 points, Jormungandr being in another game, Tyr's story not being over from the mouth of Tyr himself, and Sindri and Atreus' story being left unfinished, and from the hints of the voice actor Adam, all of that leads me to believe that we are not done in the Norse saga, and we are close to figuring out what it is. I can feel it. Now, all of those points you just heard were indications from the crew, from the people who worked on the game, which are already pretty compelling. But there are loads of hints from the actual game that tell you this saga isn't over. Like Kratos. We still don't know the official story of how Kratos got to Midgard. He just destroyed the Greek pantheon, and they mention his past several times, but he never addresses how the hell he got to Midgard. Ever. And you can't just leave that out there without any explanation. Sure, we have had mentions in comics of some of the events between Greece and Scandinavia, and we had one fever dream / memory mentioned in the novelization of the 2018 game. Click the card up here to watch my video on my analysis of that passage from the novelization and give you my theory on what is going on. Spoiler alert, I think it's all to do with Faye, but seeing it in a comic and in a book doesn't count, and isn't even a real explanation. It doesn't tell you fully exactly what happened. And because they're outside of the game, I'm sorry, it just doesn't count. We need to see it in front of our eyes to make it real. And by the end of Ragnarok, Kratos was sort of without purpose. He was just out there doing whatever good he can. No, I think this was left like that on purpose for the next game. The next massive part of the story that was left unfinished, Faye, the character that was the driving force for our god of war and Atreus to travel across all of the realms and eventually Jotunheim, and the reason why we followed through with this fight against the gods of Asgard. And her story is still a complete mystery. We see her ashes glow when we released them at the end of 2018, which felt like it meant something. And we see her in a few cryptic flashbacks which kind of seem like she's talking to us, but then it seemed like they're actually flashbacks, which was only really her explaining what to do when she dies, but also pretending she doesn't know that she's going to die. It's all a bit confusing. And we also get a story told by trapped souls in Vanaheim after a fight with Thor, which seemed cool, but we never actually get to see it. Are you telling me that that's all we're going to get from this character you built up so much? No. Her story, I feel like, was purposefully left unfinished and her death still a mystery, so that we can pick up the story in a later game, something more focused on our family, Kratos, Atreus and Faye, so that we can have the full impact of her with her son, her husband, after they have fully walked the path her and Groa the Knowledge Keeper foresaw. And I'm kind of excited for that. That was my #1 request for God of War Ragnarok. The fact that we didn't see it really upset me, although I get the feeling that we're going to see it here in this next game. At least I hope so. Then, what about the panel in Jotunheim that Angrboda wouldn't show us? She showed us quite a few panels and showed us deep and disturbing things about our future and Kratos' demise, and taught us a bunch of things about giants and their history between the Aesir, etc. But she left one panel hidden from us permanently, and there's no way to see what's behind it. Why? If you think about that under the impression that this is the last game, it just seems confusing and odd. But if you consider that there might be another game coming, then it all starts to make sense. Of course she left that one panel concealed, because there is another game coming. I bet you that this panel and a few more things in Jotunheim are going to be huge in this next game, and it's going to be amazing. That's why it's hidden from us. And then when you start to think about other new characters like Tyr, as I mentioned before, who we only got to meet at the end of the game for real, and then when we traveled to other realms, he seemed to be doing things that seem to have no explanation, but could be interpreted as a tease for something coming. And through taking her father's hammer, blasting off into the sky and Alfheim with it. And what did she mean when she said this?
I'll make you proud, Dad.
Clearly this is setting up for something that we have yet to see, and we're supposed to believe that there's nothing. Guys, do you see where I'm coming from? Before I was like, oh, you know, they said there's not going to be another game, okay, but after seeing all of this, after putting it all together, there's no way that there's not more coming, right? I know that Eric and Cory could come out tomorrow and definitively prove that nothing else is coming, although would we believe them trolls? But they would have to explain all of this, and I just don't see how they can say, yeah, all of that was just for nothing. Sorry guys, and everything they said as well, nah, that didn't mean anything. So all I'm saying, there's just a lot of good evidence, so get excited for hopefully something coming soon in God of War Ragnarok. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is all of my evidence to why I think there's more coming. In my next video, I think I'm going to put together a light theory on how I think the next game will go and what I'd like to see. I think this would be quite fun. Let me know in the comment section what you want to see, what you think might happen, and I can add it in that video coming up. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Catch you guys all in the next one.